Hey there, pen fans. Brian Goulet here of GouletPens.com, and this is episode number 283 of Goulet and Q&A. I apologize for being gone last week. I'd originally planned to do a Q&A, but we had Dante Del Vecchio visiting, and I just ran out of time in my schedule to shoot a Q&A. So, you know what? Dante and I shot 5 videos together, the first of which we published last week. So you'll get plenty of video stuff. I just ran out of time with the Q&A. So apologize about that between our holiday and then I was still getting over being sick, Dante visiting and all that. Anyway, it just happened. Sometimes life happens, but I'm back, I'm here, and we're gonna get into it. I'm not gonna do the full intro thing, but today I am gonna be talking about what pens that I love to dismantle, take apart, clean, rose gold inks, especially to match rose gold pens, and how to have a strong relationship between a retailer and a pen manufacturer from my perspective. So should get into some good stuff this week. So yeah, let's get right to it, shall we? Pen and writing questions. This is from Amber Schmidt 22 on Instagram. How should you prep your pens for long-term storage? Should you disassemble them? It's pretty simple, really. Just clean them, ideally, and make sure that they're dry. So if you're storing it for a long time, obviously you don't want to have ink in it. The ink can dry up over time, and then that's going to be a real pain to clean out. If it's like really, really long-term storage, you know, maybe you want to put it together with its box. I don't know, but for me, like I have a whole cabinet of pens over here. I'm not using these pens every day. But I will reference them, so I keep them, you know, dry and empty and just in there. That's really the ideal situation, and that's really all you need. You know, if you have a pen that has any type of silicone grease or anything that's like user maintainable, it's not a bad idea to just, you know, grease it up and, get it in its good place before, you know, basically just kind of get it back to what it was when you got it new. Like that's really a good way to store it. As far as should you disassemble them, you know, I couldn't tell from your question whether you were thinking like, should you disassemble when you clean them? It's not a bad idea if you want to really in your thorough cleaning process, if you disassemble them to a degree, especially if a pen like a, you know, a TWSBI or something like that, they include a wrench, it's fairly easy. Needler's pen's pretty easy. Other ones are varying degrees depending on your own comfort level of disassembling a pen, especially if you've used like a shimmering ink or something like that. It's not a bad idea if you're going to store it for a long time. You don't know when you're going to use it again. You don't know what you're going to ink it up with in the future. Go ahead and just get it as clean as humanly possible. If disassembling is part of that process, more power to you. Not necessarily required, but individual situations may vary. But do you need to disassemble them in the actual storage process? Like, should you uncap it? Should you take out the piston or anything? I wouldn't, because me personally, I have a lot of pens. When I disassemble them in parts, it's easy for parts to get mixed up. Stuff can get damaged, or especially if you take out like a piston mechanism, there's like grease on it. There's other things. You don't want stuff like getting all inside the pen. You know, pens are fairly self-contained objects. So if you have them all together in one nice little package and store them like that, you should be in really good shape. So I don't think you need to overthink it too much, but just basically as you pull the pen out of the box, that condition that it's in, that's the best condition for it to be for long-term storage. There you go. I hope that helps you out. And that's been successful for me for the last 10 years or so. So I think you'd be in good shape, whatever you do. All right, next question I have is from Heidi Snell on Instagram. What's the most fun pen to clean or take apart? I didn't go with just one pen because, frankly, I have several and for different reasons. So I'll unpack them just a little bit. One that I love is Edison Nouveau Premier, or really any of the Edison pens, Herbert pens, you know, any of these kind of independent pen maker pens, mainly because they're relatively straightforward in terms of their parts. They're pretty easy to take apart. They're made to be eyedropper serviceable, so all the threads and stuff are fairly tight tolerances. You can unscrew the nib units, so it just makes it really easy. You want to take out the converter when you unscrew the nib unit just to make it a little easier. You know, but it makes it easy. You can pull the nib and the feed out of the housing pretty easily. And there's just not that many parts, so it's really easy to take it apart, clean it, completely disassemble it, put it back together. I will often, if I'm just sitting at my desk, like do this as I'm, whatever, talking on the phone with somebody or having a meeting or something. I'm a tinkerer, so I will take my pens apart, put it back together quite a bit just for fun. I don't like time myself or anything, though I probably could. I could probably do some damage there. So that's a good one. Again, any of the kind of like relatively straightforward, you know, not a lot of parts to them kind of pens like the Edisons are really good. Other ones I like, and this will be highly controversial, I actually like taking TWSBI pens apart. Now I've got videos on that. I will say TWSBI includes wrenches, they have instructions. We've done videos on them. Even still, that's probably one of the pens that we get feedback the most, maybe in combination with Noodler's pens, that people are like, I've tried everything and I cannot figure it out. It's the piston that really jacks people up. So they include these wrenches and stuff like that to be able to take them apart. I don't know, I just have a knack for it. I've really never had any difficulty doing it personally. The nib and the feed on this one, so the nib is fine to slide out. The feed fins can be a little delicate. That's the only thing that I'll kind of caveat with these TWSBI pens. The feed can be a little delicate, so that one I'm not personally taking apart quite as much, or I'll just be a little cautious as I'm doing it. But really it's a piston, you know, I don't often need to take the nib and the feed out. It's really the piston that makes it super easy, especially if I'm cleaning it. You can, you know, use the wrench, which, you know, I wanted to have for this video, but I friggin' lost it. So I actually don't know where I have many of them. Just, you know, I've got this like embarrassing junk drawer over here. Oh, here it is. Found it. I knew it was in there somewhere. All right, so here's my little TWSBI Ego wrench. The metal one comes with the TWSBI all, really they all disassemble similarly. And the VAC 700R can be kind of fun too. So you just put this in here, which way does it go? That way. Clockwise. Clockwise gets it out. If you don't unscrew the mechanism too much, then you can keep the mechanism completely assembled as you take it apart. That's really what screws people up, is when they end up separating out the piston rod from the piston mechanism, the twist mechanism itself. People have a hard time setting that back in properly. But if you unscrew the mechanism enough, put the wrench on, and then as you start to take it out, you then twist the mechanism so it goes up a little bit, then that rod will be seated in there properly. You see here, I can't just like pop it out because it's partially screwed in. Then you're in good shape. And then what I do is I take a bulb syringe and I flush it and clean it just like you would a cartridge converter pen. Makes it so much faster. If I want to get a Q-tip up in there, I can. And then when I go to reassemble this thing, maybe I'll throw a little silicone grease on the threads here. Maybe not, or on the seal, not the threads. Oh, you can throw it on the threads too. Go to reassemble it. I've kept this whole back unit as one thing. That's the most straightforward way to do it. It's when you like really try to take the whole, I'm screwing it the wrong way. When you take the whole thing apart, that's when it gets really kind of messed up and can trick you out a little bit. But even still, try again, and you'll solve it. So anyway, there you go. That's that one. So I do like taking the TWSBIs apart, especially because they just look so crisp and clear and parts are so distinct. That's a lot of fun. And then another one that I like is the Noodler's, a bunch of Noodler's pens, but the Boston Safety Pen. Partly because this design is just so different, so unique for what pen it is. If you're not familiar with the Boston Safety Pen, basically the entire body's filled, you're like, where's the nib? The nib actually is attached to the back of the pen here. So as you see, it's all one thing. It's basically got the body of the pen is here, and it kind of slides like that. So the nib is actually sitting down and is saturated in the ink the whole time you're carrying it. This is a design that was, very popular in the early 1900s. It's called a safety pen because it won't leak. So basically, because you don't have a nib at the top here, this part seals up to the inner part of the cap. You can keep your nib completely submerged in ink. Noodler's claims you can even use like India ink and other things like that. Ink that typically would be a problem is able to flow through this pen. I haven't tested it with all these different types of ink, but I've heard good reports from others. But the pen completely disassembles. I haven't done this in a while, so let me see. You unscrew the back. This one doesn't require any tools. That's the nice thing about basically all the Noodler's pens is it doesn't require any special tools to take them apart. But the Boston Safety Pen, because it's just so different, so this back tube slides off like so. And then you can see here now where that nib is attached right there. So I can unscrew this piece right here, like that. There you go. It's got an O-ring in there. There's a bunch of little parts and pieces, so if you don't like taking pens apart, don't do that with this one. And then this knob unscrews. Oh boy, let's see if I can get that thing off. Can I do it? Oh yeah, there we go. No. Am I even doing that right? Maybe it goes the other way. I can't get it. Oh, look at that. Shame on me. Oh, that's right. Oh, I'll have to take it off. Oh, okay, that's even better. Okay, this part is threaded and does come off, but I might need to get my rubber grip to be able to do it. Okay, so technically maybe Didn't need a tool to be able to do it. Okay, but anyway, so you can see all the parts here. It's got the O-rings on the back. It's got all these neat little parts, the nib, the feet, all that kind of stuff. It's just really cool to be able to take apart and you're like, wow, there's so many different things going on with this pen. And then to reassemble it, you basically just kind of undo what I just did. Screw that back on there, this part. Now that's locked in place there. I can slide this tube back on, fit onto the back. So anyway, this is a little more complicated and you don't want to lose any of these O-rings or anything like that, but it is kind of interesting just because it's such a different design. So that one's kind of fun. And then the other one that I have is different than all these because any of these pens, basically if you take them apart and completely disassemble, well, maybe not the Edison, that's not so bad, but the Boston Safety, the TWSBI, if they're inked up, you're gonna have a huge mess on your hands. You can only take them apart in the cleaning process. Both the Edison and the Kaweco Supra that I have here can be a lot of fun because you can disassemble them basically while they're inked and you can really kind of mess around with them. And there's different parts and stuff like that. And so you can do that and you know, you can take off the parts in pieces, you can flip them around. I like to like take them off and just like screw the backs onto different parts of each other. And you know, you can kind of do that. You can actually like take out the inner guts of the Supra and you can make it look like there's a pen, but it's like, oh, I've got the inside right here. You can play a joke on your friends if they're nerds like you with pens. But anyway, so pretty straightforward. You can do it with a converter, you can do it with a cartridge. If you have a cartridge, you can actually take out this middle section of the Supra and you can make the Supra even shorter, like the length of a Lilliput if you're familiar with that pen. The converter won't fit on there if you do it that way, but then voila, you got that. So you can just do some fun stuff, and then if you want, you can take this part and you can screw it onto the back, and you know, it's just kind of fun. You get to kind of mix and match and do kinds of interesting things with it, if you so choose. So just another fun little tinkerer's pen, and it's pretty straightforward to take it apart. It has a nib unit, just like the Edison does, so you can actually unscrew the nib unit. With its housing and everything, you can yank the nib and feed out, so it makes it easier for cleaning. But it's kind of an interesting pen. Lots of fun to play around with, and there you go. So you kind of got like 4 pens in one for this question, but there you go. All right, Legal Shemdrick on Twitter. Am I the only one who can never tell if I'm filling up my Visconti Homo Sapiens properly and finding it impossible to gauge if there's ink in the chamber? No, you are definitely not the only one. You're in good company there. I love the Homo Sapiens. Been daily carrying one for years now. The conventional one, the old standby, the Bronze Age. Great pen, love it, hook, safe, lock, all the good things. But yes, the one downside to this is you really can't tell how much ink is in here. And that's not the only pen. There's plenty of pens out there, you know, especially if it's a piston fill or something like that, that does not have an ink window, then you really don't know. Even in your cleaning, even in your filling process. At least if you have a cartridge converter pen, like said Edison here, when you take the body of the pen off, you can look and you can see the ink level in your converter. You know, not as convenient as a demonstrator pen like a TWSBI where you can literally just see the ink sloshing around in there. That's super convenient. But with a pen like the Homo Sapiens, you cannot just pull out any part of the mechanism and see the ink level like you can on a cartridge converter. You also can't see it as you can on a demonstrator, unless you have a Homo Sapiens that is a limited edition, that is a demonstrator, like this London Fog here. Then I can very clearly see the ink level because it's got that double reservoir, it's a clear body, no problem. Also, Visconti did a skylight version as well, which I've been carrying around ever since I shot that video. So that has an ink window in the body and an ink window in the center band, and that makes it pretty easy too. That's a double reservoir just like this London Fog is. So that makes it super handy as well. You don't have those problems with those particular Homo Sapiens, but the original, Dark Age, you know, and so on, yeah, you do end up with that as an issue. So what the heck do you do? Well, some of it's technique, you know, just to make sure that you're getting a full fill. So what I like to do is when I'm filling the pen, you have your bottle of ink, you got to submerge it all the way up into the grip, you know, you just got to get the grip in there because, you know, this is a power filler and you're literally, I don't know if I have ink I think I have ink in this thing, in this one. Oh, maybe not. All right, we're gonna find out. I'm either gonna dump ink all over myself or like, let me get a napkin or something, just to make sure. There we go. Okay, this one's empty. So it's a power filler or a vacuum filler, similar kind of setup. So you're pressing on the back. So it can be a little you got to control it a little more intentionally than you do with a cartridge converter or a piston, which, you're just kind of doing slight movements with that one. This one, you're actually like holding it and it can rattle around more. You want to make sure that your grip is completely submerged. Your nib is completely submerged up to the grip. And you may even want to go a little further because sometimes when you go to fill it, if you're moving the pen and stuff due to the force that you're pressing, it can maybe give you some issues when you're filling. So make sure that it's really well submerged and pump it. Leave it in there for about 5 seconds. Pull it back, pump it again. Do that 2 or 3 times. And then you can lift it out of the bottle, still have it hanging over the bottle, and then push it down again, and you'll see a bunch of ink pour out. Then you've basically gotten a full filling. The pen's capable of holding about 1.5 milliliters. It'll get about 1 milliliter full just on its own, holding it up like this and pressing it down. So 1 milliliter is like not as much as you would, with a piston filler or something like that. These other Viscontis that have the double reservoir, they're like 3.5 milliliters, so way higher capacity. So anyway, but that's the conventional power filler that you get here, and that's fine. Still plenty of ink, but as I know from daily carrying this around a lot, I would at times run out of ink. So you want to make sure first off that you're getting the best filling that you can. So again, you can fill it a couple times, press it to make sure that the ink comes out of there, and then when you go to, you've then of course gotten all the ink out of it, but then you put it back in, press it down 2 or 3 times again. You've got ink up in there and it's primed and you just did it successfully, so you have confidence that you can do it again. Then you're pretty confident. And if you do it right and the thing's full of ink, then just the pressure from when you get those threads, that filler knob back on those threads, the feed will be very, very saturated with ink, but just the pressure of putting that filler knob, screwing it down all the way, you'll probably see a drop of ink start to fall out of here. And that's from the back pressure of the knob is connected to the seal in the front here. And as that seal pushes down, it just pushes a little bit of ink out of there and has one drip. It's actually kind of a nice thing because usually when you're filling with a piston filler or something, it's good to let maybe a drop or 2 back down anyway to make sure that feed is well primed. And it kind of does that naturally, just by the way the mechanism works. But if that's happening, then you've got ink in there and you're in pretty good shape. But you really can't tell when you're running out of ink. That is a challenge, and there's really not a good way around that because there's no ink window. It's kind of just inherent to what it is. The solution for that, really some of the simpler solutions, just make sure you fill your pen regularly. But if your writing is varied all over the place, that can be harder. So what I like to do, and this pairs up really nicely, Visconti Traveling Inkwell, it's a little bit of an investment to get it, but it holds about 6 milliliters of ink, matches up nicely with the pen. You can carry it around, and then when you're filling that, I won't do the full demonstration here, but you take the cap off just because I've got ink in it and I didn't want to ink it up yet. But anyway, you put that on there, you fill it, then you're actually getting the full 1.5 milliliters in here, so it's going to fill more. Plus, you can carry this thing around with you. It's about the size of a pen, so it fits inside a pen case or whatever, and you always have ink with you. It's easier to carry around. It's safe for flying and stuff like that, so you don't have to worry about any of that type of stuff carrying around full glass bottles or anything. I've never gone to like any travel conference or anything like that where I've needed more than this. So really, if you just using one ink color, you can bring one of these suckers and you're in good shape for basically your whole trip. Unless you're going to be like backpacking around Europe for a month or something or 2, you'd be in good shape just with that. So that's super handy. And then just a shout out for Peniter, has a pen filler, similar concept, little squattier, a little fatter, and it holds 10 milliliters of ink instead of 6, so a little higher capacity there, a little less expensive too, but also similar solution, works really well, just like the Traveling Inkwell does. So either of those pairs up really nicely. With a pen like this, you get a fuller fill, and then you can really just carry the pen fillers around with you, and then you really don't have to worry about if you run low on ink. I've literally been at like work conferences and stuff. Just went to one a couple weeks ago, and I was running low. Boom, I pull this out like in a seminar, fill it really quick. It's even got, a little doodad in the top here. I don't know what this thing is called, but it's like a little nib. It's like a little nib cleaner, a little soaker upper. Because with these pen fillers, it doesn't like get ink all over the grip of your pen. Your grip is kind of like, sealed off a little bit with the rubber, this concave rubber thing inside this unit. Much more straightforward, much cleaner fill. A lot of benefits to it in addition to the portability of it. So that is a really with the Homo Sapiens in particular, the ink, traveling inkwell pen filler pairs up particularly well with that. There you go. Hope that helps. All right, got a couple of ink questions for you. So, oh my gosh, we got some leet speak going on in this one. T3HA1T, whatever that is. T-Halt on Instagram. Forgive me if I say that wrong, but anyway, your question is, what are good inks that go with rose gold? Some of the reds seem too harsh. I would agree with you on that one. And again, you know, rose gold is just one of the, I don't know why I said again. Rose gold is one of those colors that's kind of tough to match because it's metallic, and there's not really a metallic ink. You know, you'd ask like, what's a good color to pair with gold or silver or whatever? Obviously, gold is yellow, silver is gray. What is rose gold? Well, it depends. You know, rose gold can lean different directions. But I tend to think of pink as the way to lean for rose gold. And I consulted with my pink expert around here, which is my darling wife, Rachel. And I was like, Rachel, what are the best rose golds to pair with a rose gold pen? And she educated me and informed me, because I was literally like, I know we have some rose gold colors, but what do you think? And I went with some that I thought looked like rose gold, and she was like, no, that's coral. That's not the same. And I was like, it looks the same to me. So you have to use your own judgment and take my 2 cents for what it's worth. But anyway, these 3 that I have came from Rachel. So much more trusted source, I suppose. One is Robert Oster Rose Gilt Tint. So Gilt, G-I-L-T, Tint, T-Y-N-T-E. Very hard to search for that if you don't know how it's spelled. But anyway, it is a shimmering ink. I think it's the closest match. It's a pink color that has basically like a rose gold shimmer in it. So it really looks pretty rose gold metallic. That's gonna be your most spot on match. And I think it works really well. Now there's also one called Robert Oster Schwartz Rose. The ink itself, the ink color itself is a little bit more of a brown, but the shimmer is a rose gold. So maybe if you didn't want to go with the solid rose gold look on the ink, but you still wanted that hint of rose gold, you could look at Schwartz Rose, and it could be an interesting combination for you. So check that one out. If you don't want to go the shimmering route and you just want a kind of a close color match, an increasingly popular ink has been Herbin, formerly J. Herbin, Rouille d'encre. So it's rusty anchor in French. No shimmer to it, but it's a pink that's a really decent match to a rose gold. And it was not a popular ink when we started carrying it 10 years ago, and I think over time, as rose gold has gotten more popular in general, this ink has been increasingly popular. So go figure, you know, dusty pinks are not typically super popular in an ink color, but something about that Rouille d'encre is really popular. So it's R-O-U-I-L-L-E, D''A-N-C-R-E. And then personally, I think that there's other corals and pinks that could work. That's maybe the directions that I would look instead of going to reds, which I do think would look maybe a bit harsh. Some of these pinks and stuff like that, it may get to the point where it doesn't show up so dark on certain papers and stuff like that. So you're gonna have to use your best judgment, but I think going with the more the pink route is gonna be the way to go for you to find something to match your rose gold pen. All right, Kim Lindsay OH on Twitter asked, so many sheening inks have a red sheen. Are there any blue inks with a green sheen or green inks with a blue sheen? Why is it always red? That's my one turnoff for Emerald of Chivor. Why couldn't the sheen be blue or green? Okay, now I'm gonna quickly get to a place here where I don't know what I'm talking about, but I know a little bit, maybe enough to be dangerous. So a lot of this has to do actually with like physical properties of ink and okay, I'm already getting to a place where I can't explain it. I'm reminded of the Einstein quote that if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. So I am very much living in that territory here. But basically, sheen comes from when the ink is dry and it's on a relatively smooth surface. There is actually a reflection of light that bounces off that ink, and it doesn't actually occur in the ink itself. You're not actually seeing ink that is happening in the ink color. So it's not like you can just add a different sheening component that makes it sheen a different color. It's not, it doesn't quite work like that. The best way to describe it, it's happening at the ink-air interchange level. So it's actually happening on top of the ink. So if you think about like if you're ever washing your car and you have soapy water that kind of mixes with like an oily kind of spot in your driveway, and there's like oil, soap, all that, and it has kind of this like rainbow swirly effect on the water. What you're seeing there is light reflection, and it's giving it that kind of rainbow effect. It's sort of like that, maybe not exactly, but it's that kind of effect. You're not actually looking at rainbow water. You're looking at light reflecting and making it look a different color. That's kind of what you got going on with ink sheen. And it's because of basically the wavelength of the light as it's being reflected that it has this reddish hue to it. So it's actually not like a dye component in the ink, though there are different components that happen with the ink. Maybe it has to do with the lubrication, maybe it has to do with some other things. I'm not 100% sure. This is where I fall off a cliff because I start researching this stuff, and honestly, it's happening like in, like scientific papers and stuff, and I just like my eyes glaze over. But I'm able to understand it, at least in concept. So you're looking at actually light reflecting off the ink at the air ink level, interchange level, and you're seeing that wavelength of light that is reflecting, and it's giving it that red sheen. It's not actually the ink color itself. And it has to do with that spectrum of light. That's the best way that I can possibly explain it. I really hope I'm right. If I'm wrong or way off base, and I have had a customer email me this concept before, so I know that I'm on the right track here. And I was able to research it a little bit online as well. So again, it's a physical property of the light reflection, not the ink itself. But it can be lessened or increased in its appearance based on the properties of the ink, the type of paper, and type of light, and so on. So that's why it looks more extreme with certain ink colors than others. But that is part of why you're seeing kind of the same reddish sheen on a number of different ink colors, and why you can't just like make it a different color sheen. You can have different ink properties that have maybe a halo effect or whatever, but that sheen, and I can't say this definitively, but I'm pretty sure that sheen is always going to lean red. But I could be wrong. I'd be curious if there were some other future development that happened where it was that. But I'm pretty sure it's like a physical property that can't be changed. All right. Sorry to crush your dreams. All right. ICUR12 on Instagram. What can I do if I really dislike a bottle of ink that I bought? Really dislike it. Well, it's always a bit of a gamble, right? Like, we're an online retailer. When you buy it online, what are you going to do? Even if you're buying it in person, unless somebody's swabbing it, and then even if you're swabbing it, like literally my first bottle of fountain pen ink that I bought it in person at a pen show. Someone dipped and swabbed and handed it to me on a card, and I was like, yeah, I wanted a deep blue, literally like this color. And I was like, I want a deep, vibrant blue. They swabbed it. I was like, heck yeah, that's what I want. I bought it. It was Diamond China Blue. Well, of course, China Blue. It's really like a dusty blue. This was actually the original formulation of China Blue. It's since changed a little bit, but it was like a periwinkle blue, and I was like, But it looked really deep and saturated as it was being swabbed. Anyway, long story short, that was part of my experience of why I thought ink samples would be such a great idea. And that was the birth, really, of the idea of doing ink samples was, man, there's got to be a way to get a better idea of what an ink is going to look like in your pen. And that was part of the motivation. So there you go. Lots of samples later, here we are. So I'm a big fan of ink samples because you never really know. But say you've already bought the bottle of ink, what the heck do you do? It's tough for us as a retailer because I completely empathize with where you're at. I bought this bottle, I spent X number of dollars on it, I really don't like it, what do I do with this thing? If you've used that ink, we really can't do anything with it at that point. It's kind of like buying a ice cream cone. It's like once you lick that ice cream cone, it's like, can't like sell that ice cream cone to somebody else. What do you do with that thing? Okay, it's maybe a bad analogy, but still, it's been used. You've dipped your pen in it. We don't want to deal with contamination issues or anything like that. So it's like we really can't resell used ink. As a retailer, we really can't take it back. So that kind of sucks. Plus, with shipping and all that stuff, is it really worth the trouble to do that anyway? Maybe, maybe not. Really depends on the ink that you're looking at. Some bottles are relatively expensive, $7 or something, and by the time you ship it, it's not worth the trouble. But you know, other people, you spend a little bit more. Is it worth it? Maybe you can resell it on your own. I know plenty of people that will do that. Honestly, that's probably more just like try and recoup your losses a little bit. You're not really making anything, but recoup your losses a little bit, and somebody else can get to enjoy the ink rather than just sitting around. You know, you can do that in your own channels. You can offer it up to people in different fountain pen places online. I know that happens, you know, various places like Reddit and Fountain Pen Network, and there's various marketplaces, you know, Instagram, like, you know, different things going on there. So that's certainly an option. So that can help. You can donate it to another pen user, you know, kind of a giveaway type situation, or you know, just a newer pen user, somebody who's kind of just starting out, really just wants any ink, any pen, whatever. If you're like, yeah, I'm not using this bottle of ink, I don't love it, you can offer it up to them and they would be absolutely thrilled, especially if they're like a poor student of some kind, you know. You could keep it, maybe use it for ink mixing or experiments of some kind. That's up to you if that's your thing. If it's not, that's fine too. You could consider what else you could use it for, maybe like ink washing, watercolor. You know, you can do, it's really cool artwork that I forget exactly what this process is called, but you take a string, you know, just like a regular string or a piece of yarn or something like that. I think it's called like string art. You dip it in some sort of like water-based dye ink, like fountain pen ink is perfect for this. You put the string across a page in a notebook, you close the notebook, and then you yank the string out of the notebook. It looks super cool. And it might be the kind of thing that like maybe that would look really cool with the color of ink that you don't really like to use in your pen, but may look great in some other creative art form that maybe you hadn't considered before. So there's that. You could just throw it out and just move on with your life. That's an option. You could also hang on to it and revisit it later, because sometimes your taste might change. You may be like, oh, I hate these desaturated colors. I really want just deep, bold, crazy sheening colors. And then 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you could be like, yeah, I'm kind of done with these sheening things. I'd really like something with a lot of shading. You know, your palette changes, you get more sophisticated in your whatever diversity of ink choices, and you revisit something that's been on the shelf for a while, and you're like, you know what? This actually is not a bad color after all. So if you're cool hanging on to it, maybe revisit it later, and you may have a rekindled love. Who knows? But obviously the best thing is to try to avoid that situation in the first place. That's why we have samples. That's why we have our swab shop. We try to be color accurate. So use those resources as you can. But in the end, you know, sometimes it's going to be a calculated risk, and you got to do what feels right to you. Cool. All right, we're going to end this week on a business question. This is from Brad the Bear 1 on Instagram. How are good relationships established between a pen manufacturer and a retailer? I think this is interesting side of things, because you don't really get to see this side of it much. You get to see me talking into a camera, but there's a whole other aspect of what we do here at Goulet Pens that has to do with manufacturer relationships or manufacturer-distributor relationships. I'm going to explain that in a second. Sometimes you get to see us working together. Just last week, put out a video with Dante Del Vecchio. He's the pen designer, pen expert, creator, whatever you want to call him, at Peniter. Lots of years of pen experience. He's coming on camera talking about his pens. He's kind of unique in that way. Not everybody does that on the pen manufacturing side, but it's great when you get somebody who's got a personality, you get to see their passion and stuff like that. What I can say is, you know, Dante's a bit of a character, right? Like, he's super passionate outwardly, and he's great in that way. There are plenty of people like that in the pen industry, but there's a lot of other people who their passion just shows up differently. You know, Nathan Tardif as an example. He also has a personality, very different personality than Dante. He likes to stay behind the camera, you know, and he's shot his own videos and he goes in deep detail. His passion shows up more in thoughtfulness and detail and explaining, you know, all the history and knowledge that he has and putting that into the development of his products, usually with some kind of historical or political, you know, messaging to it, right? So very different kind of thing, but you know, so every relationship that we have is highly individualized, because, you know, basically this is a very passionate community, not just a pen people, like people who are using and buying these pens, but even those who are retailing them, maybe distributing them, manufacturing them. Pretty much everybody in the process is here because they have a passion for what they do. Maybe that's not completely universal, but I think that's happening more than most other industries probably. It's not a highly commoditized industry, so those who are here mainly because they want to be and they love what they do. So does make for some very interesting relationship building things. We do spend a decent portion of time on that here. So the relationships are usually twofold, especially for us here in the US. This may not be for everybody. It's certainly not for every brand the exact same, but more often than not, there is a manufacturer who is selling globally, right? Offering globally. It's way too much. A manufacturer might be a really small company. It might be like 20, 30 people, right? You think of some of these pen companies as being these massive companies. Most of them are not that massive. They might be sourcing, raw components out and other pieces, and they're doing the design and assembly and manufacturing of certain pieces, maybe not others. So some of it's not like you have these huge, automotive or cosmetic or, food type, huge assembly productions. Most pen manufacturing is not like that. I did the video on the Lamy, like how it's made, very popular video. Lamy is by far one of the bigger producers of pens. Their facility looks like really, really big and professional, right? In the grand scheme of things, even that's not that big of a setup in terms of mass manufacturing, right? So in the grand scheme of things, everything in fountain pens is really scaled down. So it makes for a more intimate kind of connection that we get with manufacturers a lot of times. But that said, what that does, because you have smaller manufacturers, it might be 20, 30 people who are selling products worldwide. The world is a big place. There's a lot of different languages, different markets, different government rules, taxes, tariffs, all kinds of things. So a lot of times, these companies, the manufacturers really specialize in designing and making products. Distribution is kind of a whole other thing. And this is very common in other industries, but it is very common in pens too. Usually what happens, you have a manufacturer who sells to a distributor who really knows their local market well. That distributor then sells to retailers like us, hello, and then the retailers sell to you. Now, yes, money has to be made throughout there. There is markup that happens. We could debate that all day long, but from what I've seen being involved in the chain, everybody earns their money, right? Like there's a reason why pens cost more than just the raw cost of what it takes to manufacture, because there's a lot that has to happen all along the way. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. We're not really going to go there. But what I will say is that everybody involved does play a pretty important role, because communication is involved and there's a lot of movement and of these products and stuff, and even just identifying, where these products should be sold is a harder job than you would think it would be, especially for such niche products like these. That said, the role that ends up happening, how do we build these good relationships? Really, whatever arrangement there is. Sometimes we're buying through a distributor, sometimes it's direct to the manufacturer, sometimes we're making stuff ourselves. It's really all about people, right? If you're a retailer, we're dealing directly with customers. Lots more people interaction there. Distributors deal with fewer, but their customers are retailers. Manufacturers, their customers are distributors, right? Like, so it's all people, all relationships, all communication. At the end of the day, in product-based business, it's really all about people. And in many other businesses, I would say business really is all about people. So everything is people. Communication is absolutely critical, and it's the number one issue, especially with pens. Pens are actually surprisingly complicated to manufacture. A lot can go wrong in the manufacturing process. There's a lot of feedback that happens through the process of going manufacturer to you all as the end user of these pens. And there's a lot that needs to be communicated back, forth, up, down, all around. So the better they communicate, the more that you build trust with each other, the better everything's going to go. And also the more your goals or values are aligned. So that is something that, is probably overlooked in many industries. But do we have the same values? Like some retailers may be all about service, and the price of the product does not matter. They would sell a product at any price, but the quality and the service has to be absolutely key. You may have heard of there's a triangle between price, quality, and service, or speed maybe sometimes is thrown in there too. And they say you can pick 2 out of the 3, but you can never have all 3. You can't have low price, high quality, and high service. Now, you could argue whether that's actually true, but generally speaking, there's some compromise to be made there. So with that in mind, you can have a manufacturer who really values quality, but they charge a lot for their products. And so if a retailer does not care about that, they just want to sell something at the lowest price possible, they might be kind of like button heads and tugging at different ends of the triangle. That doesn't make any sense. But they may be like kind of off tilt in terms of where they place their value and what the product should be. That usually doesn't end up going as well as it could, right? It definitely helps when a given retailer has much more alignment with the manufacturer, their brand, their goals. Now, the best stance, in my opinion, as a retailer, like have your own strong values, communicate them to your manufacturer, but as an authorized retailer, you are representing a product that the manufacturer is making. Whatever the manufacturer's wishes are, it's really your job to help position those products and communicate them to the world as the manufacturer desires, because they're the ones creating the product. So really, you're kind of like, fulfilling their wishes. And, if customers are asking for something different, this is too expensive, I'll be like, yeah, but this is where the manufacturer wants to be. So this is where we're putting it. It's when you have a misalignment, that's when things can get out of whack and feel kind of weird and get wonky. So having that tight communication, having a strong values alignment is really, really, really key to a successful relationship. The way we view it here at Goulet is we view it really as a partnership, right? We have really partnership all around. We have partnership with you as a customer. We want to serve you well, work with you, communicate with you. We're trying to balance that out with our whole supply chain and the actual end result product, trying to find the best match, right? That's why we offer so many different products, because not everything is the best for everybody, because people are looking for different things and all kinds of stuff. So it's our job to help find that match and then provide you with great service. So, we view it really as in like a partnership type relationship. And then the better that we all understand each other, the more kind of synergy there is. I hate to use a buzzword, but that's kind of true. And the better, faster, more inspired products that you're likely to see. The more that we are in sync with the manufacturer and the better we're communicating your desires to them and they understand and match up with that, that's when magic can happen and you get some really great, exciting products. Manufacturer loves it because they're getting you excited, and you're excited because they're providing you the things that you want, and it works really well. But there's a lot of complicated stuff behind the scenes that has to happen for that to be the case. So anyway, that's kind of what it is. It's basically just work. It's relationships like anything else, like you would have relationships with a friend or a significant other. Business relationships are obviously not exactly the same, but it takes work, it takes time, it takes communication, just like anything else. So there you go. My question of the week for you this week as we end is, what do you do with all the ink that you have that you don't like anymore? I would love to hear what you have to say in the comments. Be sure to subscribe, like our YouTube videos if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching this whole Q&A, ending just a little bit early here today, but happy to be back and doing it for you. We're going to be shooting next week, episode 200 of Right Now. We got something planned for you, so be on the lookout for that. Hope you have a great weekend and a fantastic rest of your week. Thanks so much for watching, and right on.